we wanted to cover this story because I feel like it has largely gotten ignored in the national media because this case is taking place during the election season. But we wanted to bring in Kirsten Fleming. She's a New York Post features columnist, and she's been covering the Daniel Penny trial in New York City. To refresh, Daniel Penny was a former Marine who was arrested for putting a chokehold on someone who was threatening people, he says, on the New York City subway. He's being charged with felony charges for that. We'll get the details of how that's going. We bring in now Kirsten, who has been in that courtroom, Kirsten Fleming from the New York Post. What should we know about the case, Kirsten? Thanks for giving us the time here on this Friday. For people who
Yeah.
haven't been able to follow it very much, what's gone on so far?
Well, in the courtroom, I mean, it's been interesting because the prosecution's witnesses are basically people who were on the subway that day. And a lot of them have been so favorable for the defense. A lot of them had said, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to pass out. It was the most terrified I've been. A lot of those people are very seasoned subway riders. So this is not like, I came in town from Peoria, got on the subway, and I saw a guy screaming, and I freaked out. Like these are all New Yorkers, and they're used to that. So the strongest witness they've had is the ME who said it was definitively a chokehold that Neely died from. And yesterday, and it's still going on in court now, the defense put forward an expert who said that he didn't die from a chokehold, that he died from combined effects of schizophrenia, synthetic marijuana use, the struggle, and a sickling event. So it's, who knows what's going to happen, but this is what's going on right now.
Hey, Kirsten, appreciate you being with us, and I'm glad that someone's down there to cover what's really going on. I've wondered, how is it in the courtroom? Like, there's some stuff on social media I've seen about how there's a lot of that seems like this is something that activists are very involved in now, and the people who are watching this, it does a political feel. I mean, can you just bring us into the courtroom? Like, what has it been like, and what are you sensing from the proceedings here about how it's going?
Well, I think that things have been going pretty well for Penny, which is, very good news, obviously. But there was one day when everything kind of erupted. There was like a woman who had to be escorted out because she was wailing at an unnecessary time. There was another woman who started just sort of weeping. And, you can't have that. The jury deserves to have some sort of peace in that. They don't deserve to hear all of these outbursts. And then even that day, one of the Neely supporters got into a huge blowout with one of the cops outside when we cut for a break, to the point where he was screaming at the guy saying, F your rules. So that day was a big circus, and the judge had to kindly scold people. Hey, listen, the jury deserves to not hear this. You cannot act this way. And so things have been pretty good since. And, they run a tight ship down there. There are protesters every morning outside on their bullhorn. It tends to go away by the time the jury is seated. But yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of Neely supporters. It doesn't feel, I think like since that day that the judge scolded everybody, I think it's kind of gone a little bit more, I think, controlled. Yesterday was really contentious with the defense expert, who basically said that he didn't die from a chokehold. And by the way, I would never render a decision after only 2 days of not actually seeing the toxicology report. So, the obviously on cross, the ADA was extremely aggressive, and it was like the stuff that courtroom dramas are made of. So that was kind of an exciting day.
Kirsten, one of the things that's important about being in a courtroom that is different, even if you're able to watch some of the proceedings on television, is you can actually watch the jury react to the testimony, to the judge, to the lawyers, to the defendant. How would you assess the jury? Have they been engaged? Have they been responsive or emotive in any way based on what you've seen from the testimony? Take us into their world so far as you can see it.
So far, they've been pretty emotionless, I would say. There's been a few moments that have elicited some giggles, of course, but for the most part, a smile there, a smile here. It's not really you really can't tell. I mean, they all have pretty good poker faces, so I'm not getting anything from them. The only thing that I'm getting from them is really like intense stares, like when they're watching, because we are watching, it's almost like watching game tape. It's gruesome, right? We're watching the video over and over and over of this incident, which was taken by a journalist who was on the scene. So they have this basically like a 6-minute video, close to 6-minute video, and we're just parsing it, just going back and forth. It really feels like game film. And so I feel like they have very intense stares at the screen, but there's no tells. I can't say there's really any tells.
Am I right? We're speaking to Kirsten Fleming from the New York Post, who's been doing great reporting on the Daniel Penny trial day in and day out in the courtroom, writing for the New York Post. So my understanding is, and you're following this obviously much more closely, that Jordan Neely did have a pulse after and when police arrived. Is that correct? Has that been definitively entered into the record? What can you, because that obviously goes to, if he's still alive after the chokehold is no longer a chokehold, that brings into question some of the things that are being said by the prosecution.
Yeah, so I mean, the Emmy explained it that he basically died. His brain died first. So when your brain dies first, your circulatory system, the heart's still pumping a little bit. So it's common to have a pulse for about 10 minutes after expiration. So that was explained away.
Gotcha. Because I saw the reporting on that, and just from the way that the witnesses, I mean, because I think this is really just going to be ultimately a reasonable man test in terms of the use of force here, or really, is this about excessive force more than anything else? Is that, it seems to me like, based, again, you're there, but based on just the reports that I've read, that the prosecution seems to say, look, that he stepped in isn't the problem, it's that he held him too long.
Yeah, the actual words are he went too far. And that's what they're alleging. But here's the thing, it's that you can't really tell, no one can actually tell what kind of pressure he's applying. Like, you can't look at that video and definitively say, oh yeah, he was applying this consistent pressure after he had passed out. Like, no one can actually definitively say that. So that's where I kind of struggle. Like, the word pressure, it's a loaded word in this case, right? I mean, there's pressure all around it, but no one can really definitively say, yeah, like I can see from this angle, he still has the pressure, because the angles change too, and the movements change. So it's really, as much as we have this record of what happened, it's again, like to see it play over and over again, you can't definitively say, it's not, I'm talking about game tape, but we don't have multi-angle cameras. It was just one guy with a cell phone. And there was another video taken by like an 18-year-old girl, and they keep using it, but you can't really see much from that either. So that's really the crux of it, is that they're not saying that his intentions were bad. They're saying he went too far, and that he did not see Jordan Neely's humanity on the train that day.
Kirsten,
those are the words.
I asked you about the jury and how you think they're reacting. I can't even imagine being Daniel Penny, because you're on that subway. It's not like you're intending for this to occur.
Yeah.
How would you say he has appeared sitting at that defense table? And how do you think the jury is perceiving him? Because it is true that it's such a challenge for the defendant to be there, knowing that he has to not only hear what people are saying, but know that people are watching how he responds to what people are saying. It's a very strange dynamic.
It is. And in fact, I keep trying to see if I can see him turn his head like towards the screen, and he very rarely does. He seems to stare straight ahead. I've only really seen him lean over and talk to his lawyer once. He is, I mean, the posture to die for. I mean, you could put a portrait flush on his back. I mean, that's how just like he's so stoic. He gives you really nothing. And that's why, we had the video of him getting interrogated where you actually hear his voice for the first time, which a lot of people, which is making the rounds on social media right now. And everyone's going, don't talk to them, get a lawyer. Everyone's like panicking, like watching it. You can see he has that moment where he thinks he's going in to help them. And then he realizes, oh crap, I'm in deep,
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but let me say, as a lawyer, even if you think you have done nothing wrong, when they ask you to go and sit and they start quizzing you, you're right. That video of the interrogation has begun to go viral on social media.
Yeah.
He totally thinks that he is just being a good guy, and they are
Totally.
taking advantage of the fact that he is talking to the media. You always need a lawyer. You always need a lawyer. You always need a lawyer. Sorry to cut you off, but I just want our audience to hear that.
No, that's just been the consensus. Everyone's like having this, sort of freak out over it. But, that's the only time you really hear his voice. And now when the defense, when the prosecution rested and the defense came in and they had some character witnesses, what was interesting about it was that, we really didn't know much about him. There's been so many pieces on Jordan Neely and his life, which was very tragic. It's a very, very sad case. But, don't know much about Penny. And, it's again, like you heard from his family, his mother, his sister, some Marine buddies. And, kind of gave you a sense that he's sort of a soft-spoken surfer bro. Like he's not this hothead, crazy guy. This is according to them. And you kind of see it in the video that he's not this like alpha jarhead who's like adrift, He really just kind of seems like a gentle guy, like, hey, I thought I was doing the right thing. So, it was interesting to actually hear some of the character witnesses talk about him and who he was. He's a really good student. He played the bass in the orchestra, like that big stand-up bass thing, that seems to go against character, what you think of him. That was a really interesting day, I thought.
Kirsten, last question quickly here for you, and we appreciate you. Encourage you to go follow Kirsten Fleming and read her work at the New York Post. When do we expect this case to go to the jury? Do we have a sense for when we're going to get a resolution here?
So the judge said yesterday, today's the first day I'm not in court. I'm actually off today. But the judge said yesterday that we could expect to go into the, I think, summations early next week.
So sometime after Thanksgiving, this will go to the jury probably, because I'd imagine they'd give them Thanksgiving off. Kirsten, we appreciate the time. Keep up the good work, and we'll get an update from you maybe when we get closer to an actual verdict.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend, guys.